Hello, Multiverse. Welcome to Omniverse Gamers. My name is Damian Bizzaio. Today, we're going to dissect another dynamic encounter. In this series, I try to discuss the thought processes and how I go about making my encounters for my various games. Today's encounter, I'm going to call the Goblin Bridge. So, some setup for this encounter. My party. I ran this in one of my Westmarch games, so I don't actually have a film of the actual montage like of gameplay like my other videos. But I have a little picture and I'll animate and we'll make it work. So in this Westmarch, the players they've had some dealings with these couple different goblin tribes. The goblins took one of their pets down in one of their encounters, and they got really mad. They survived. The pet survived, and they got him back to life. Although that pet is now dead from kobolds, but that's a whole other encounter. But at this time, the party had a vendetta against these goblins, and they had already gone to the outskirts of the village once, and they fought. They just were basically on a kill mission. They were this was a vendetta mission from my party. So they came and they fought some lower end goblins. And the way West Marches work, the farther you go into the map, the more difficult encounters get. So the farther away you get from the center. So after they fought the initial goblins, they found this cave into their complex, into their big underground village. So then in this next, so I don't know how many sessions went on in between, but for this next session, they knew they were going to go into the Goblin village. They were going deeper into Goblin territory to slaughter goblins. This was just a complete revenge mission. So I knew they were coming in for the kill. So I knew it was going to be party on goblins. So what I did, I used so Matt Colville has a video about action-oriented monsters, and I'll leave the link down below, which I highly suggest because that's like the greatest revelation to combat that's happened since 5th edition came out. Action-oriented monsters really make combat fun in a way that's not part of the original design, but it definitely enhances the design and adds to it. It doesn't take away from it, it adds to the design. If you watch his video, I'll leave a link, and he has in there where he changes this goblin up a little bit, and I kind of matched what he did, but I kind of changed my own thing. I had a bunch of goblins. I wanted to have some different abilities for these goblins. So what I did is I created 2 goblin lieutenants and 1 goblin overboss, kind of like a shaman, the leader. Not the big leader, because they're not going into the deep. So this is the first salvo into the village, so it's going to be tough. It's not the core of the village, but it's the outskirts. And so I kind of led the party through their goblin maze, as a kind of winding maze. So let me switch over to my map. So here's a picture. It's a static picture of the map, but you can see over on the way on the left there. There's kind of like a little bit of, I'll indicate it with a thing. You'll see like some tunnels, so I kind of weave them through the tunnels. There were some traps. They had to go slow and spring the traps because it's goblins. Obviously, they trap their level. So the players kind of and you'll see the map. The cave kind of zigzags a little bit. And that was more to facilitate the table space because I wanted to keep this map on my grid. As you can see, that's an end roll on my grid. So I just kind of wiggled around. I knew where the end row does, and then I drew this map right in front of my players with the crayon. So they're like, this map, it doesn't look like much, and it's not, but it worked. Since I drew it right in front of them in like probably 30 seconds, they thought it was a great map. But anyway, so you'll see the party members right here on the left. Then they came out of the cave complex to this big open area where there was water down below in the dark. It's dark, and the only thing they have to see is the mage, the wizard, the illusionary mage has dancing lights kind of floating around with them. So their light source is these 4 lights, so it doesn't go very far down. So they get to this rickety wooden rope bridge that goes across this cavern with this deep. They knew there was water below. They could feel the moisture, so there was water down below. They couldn't really tell how deep it was. And eventually, they got the lights in, and they realized it was like 60 feet below. So they were going across the bridge, and across the bridge, the goblins had like this. There's like a surrounding, kind of like the end of Lord of the Rings, when they fought the cave troll, and the goblins were everywhere across the bridge, shooting the arrows at them as they were running. I kind of got the idea from that. That's just where the spark for the terrain started. You know what I mean? So I had these goblins shooting bows from either side, and so the party in my mind. The party had to walk across this bridge in this kill zone where I had these other goblins. The 2 lieutenants were right in the front, and the shaman leader was in the back right here. And so that was the setup. They were coming to fight the goblins. The goblins knew they were coming. The goblins, this is an ambush. And then the goblins, my big coup de grace was going to be the goblins cutting the bridge. So as they got on the bridge, the goblins were going to cut it, and they were going to fall. In the water below, I have an invisible stalker. They don't know it's there, but in that water down in the lyrics, I have an invisible stalker, just a core invisible stalker from the monster manual, which they found out later. But anyway, so Matt Coble does the whole thing, like I said, the action-oriented thing. So the goblins, I gave them a couple things that they don't normally have. One, as a bonus action, the commanders, the lieutenants, and the leader can just be like, get in this fight. Kind of like Matt Colville's one. He pretty much did the same thing he did in his video. So as a bonus action, the lieutenants and the leader can each call another goblin to come into the mix. So from the back tunnel here, another goblin is going to come out and join this fight. That's just their bonus actions. Then, as a reactions, I gave that the lieutenants and the leader could if somebody attacked them and another goblin was 5 feet away, they could grab that goblin and pull it in front of them, and that goblin would take the damage instead of them. They would kind of switch places, sort of. You just kind of pull them there, you take the damage, and he throws them back where he was. Or they could switch places. There was a choice of either pulling him in the front, throwing him back down, or switching places with that goblin. So it was a really tactical thing I could do to move my guys around. So then I gave the Goblin Overboss some villain actions as per Matt Colville's action-oriented monsters. So they're villain actions, which kind of work like reactions, but they're not tied to your reaction. It's just a thing that the villains can do. One thing they can do once per round, if a goblin goes down, if you take a goblin down to 0, the Goblin Overboss can be like, no, you don't die until I say you die. Or that's what Matt Colville did. I just said, wake up, get up. You're not done yet. And they would actually be at 1 hit points, even though they killed him. The players killed him to 0. This reaction of the lieutenant was like, no, you're not dead. And that goblin goes to 1 hit point and he's prone. So he's still on the board, 1 hit point prone. And then I gave the lieutenants and I gave the lieutenants a villain action that they could be like, get into this, fight or move or go. I just shouted a different thing every time, and when I shouted that as lieutenant's action on their action, they could let all the other goblins either move or attack. So then the goblins on their turn were free to just attack. So the lieutenant's initiative caused the other goblins to move around into position, or if they're already in position, they could just get a free attack. And then on the goblins' turns themselves, the grunts' turns themselves, they could get their attacks, or they had their whole set of actions. So action economy was way on my side, because I had I had way more goblins. I just see there's they probably fought 20 goblins in this fight, but it was great because every time the leaders were doing things to affect combat, so they knew they kind of had to target the leaders. But every time they targeted the leaders would just grab a guy next to him and put him in front, and he would drop, and then they could call as a bonus action another guy to come in. So this was like this milling combat, and they were like, oh my god, we really have to figure out how to stop these guys quickly. We have to take out more goblins per turn that are going to return. They realized that within round 2, they already knew they had to take more than 1 goblin out every round, or they were just going to snowball. So I mean, I'd like to say they were 5th level when they fought this battle, maybe been 4th level. I don't think they had Fireball yet. No, they did not have Fireball yet, so they had to really work at this. So I thought they would be choked on this bridge, and I thought that I could kind of cut the rope on them, but I forgot because it's a West Marsh and it's a very looter kind of game. They have a lot of I give out ridiculous magic items. So one of our characters had a javelin that he can throw it, and once per day he can teleport to where the javelin lands. Even if he misses, he just can teleport to where that's where he threw that. He was already across the rope on the top. We have another character who has boots of striding and jumping. They can run and they can double their jump speed. So they were able to run across the bridge just enough to leap. And they had just enough jumping movement to get to the sides here, the 2 sides where I have the kill zone. I have this kind of V shape. As you can see, I have this kill zone set up here. So they have to, and I'm hitting them from all sides. But now the one character followed the javelin, the one character jumped. So now I have 2 characters running around causing havoc. Now, which is fine because they're slaughtering goblins or throwing goblins. So at one point they threw a goblin down into the water. When that goblin hit the water, now the lights had grown. She kind of pushed her dancing lights around a little bit. So when that goblin hit the ground, hit the water, they heard it splash, and they heard it freak out, and they heard just whoa, and they didn't see what did it, but they just saw a hump grab the goblin and take it under, kind of like R2-D2 going under in Empire Strikes Back. They just saw something take this goblin out, so they knew right then there was something in this water. So they already that was in their heads, but the bridge was still intact. So I had 2 guys running around, and the lieutenants were still, if you attacked the lieutenants, they were still pulling goblins in front of them and using them as shields, and they were just calling for another one. So it just kept piling up. So then at a certain point, so I had those 2 characters. They did have some range, so they had some range attacks. They did spell attacks, cantrips, and their guiding bolt, all this stuff. So our one character actually has this helmet. He can cast the helmet of the ram once per day. He can cast it, and he can lower his head, and he has to move double his speed forward. But he can use a shove attack, basically an athletics attack against anyone in that thing, and knock them sideways, or he can hit them for damage. I think it's 2d10 damage. He does so much damage to them as he rolls through. or he can pin if they don't pass their strength or their dex attack. They can do a strength or a dex to try to stop him, and they get pushed away. So he did that. He lowered his head and he just ran across the bridge, knocked some of my lieutenants off. Some of my guys survived. He plowed through them. They fell into the water. The stalker can only attack one at a time, so one of them got attacked. The other two were climbing up, freaking out. So it took one of my lieutenants out of the combat. He was still alive, but he was climbing up the rocks here. So he was kind of out of the combat. Then I had our main fighter who just did that. He's now right in the face of the main shaman fighting. As you can see, there's a whole horde of them to start. And by the time there, he probably had 6 of them. He was just fighting them, and he was pulling them in front of them. And he would take one down. He'd pull it in front of him, take him down. It was just a whole big... They had to eventually, they could mill and start getting these goblins down. And then our Furbolg decided to come across the bridge. And as he came across, that's when my lieutenant finally got to the top again. He cut the bridge, so the Furbolg was on the bridge. It started to fall, which was great. He was dangling from the bridge. It was an awesome thing. They have to figure that out. You figure it out. If you fall, he had to make an athletics check to hold on, and then he made it. And we was just kind of dangling there. And he has these pets that are with him. And they were kind of crawling around him. So he was just kind of So he was kind of screwed normally. But then he also had this in one of his loot things. He had this grappling hook thing he could shoot, and he could grab. He could hit something with the grappling hook like it was twice per day, and then he could pull himself towards that. So he shot his grappling hook at the cliff on the south side here, and then he pulled the grappling hook up. So then So as he got up to there, he held onto the bridge. So then he held the bridge for the other players to come across. And he held it, and he was getting attacked by the goblins, but he just withstood it, and they got across, and now everybody was across on the side. It was just this great scrum and combat, and because of the action-oriented villain actions that I gave them, it just made this combat super fun. It was crazy. They came in to kill goblins. They got to kill like 20, 30 goblins, but it was rough, and they weren't just going to come in. They didn't just come in and slaughter them. They came in, and they were like, oh, crap, stuff's going on. It's a tactical battle, and then they were in the middle of it, and they just prevailed. That's just, D&D, your players prevail. That's how it goes. But yeah, that was a super fun encounter. Like I said, the terrain, the bridge terrain was what was going to snap. The terrain of the bridge moving didn't really hurt them at all, but it did affect the combat. It made the combat really fun, even though he fell and he survived and nothing really happened to him. The excitement of, oh my God, the bridge is gone, he's dangling from it, and he fixed it. The fact that he solved that problem in an effective way made this combat really satisfying for them. They all loved this combat at the end. I remember the chat session after the game. That was really fun. That was crazy. And so it was basically just using the action-oriented monsters, and I only had one set piece. The only thing that was going to change was that the bridge was going to fall, and I was trying to push them into the water to deal with the invisible stalker, and then they had to climb up. That was another part of the encounter. But I only ended up getting one of my party members in the water, and they were able to climb up out of the water before the stalker could get to them. So they were in the water. They were like, oh my God, I'm in the water. I know this thing's here. Crap. But it was really, in mechanical wise, they fell. They made their roll. They climbed. They were fine. But in the narrative and the story of the game, they were like, oh my God, I'm in the water. This thing's going to get me. And everyone's like, oh. And then he climbed out. So yeah, that was just an encounter that was based on action-oriented monsters that I ran. It was really fun. I hope that helps you guys kind of get the thought processes and thinking about making your own encounters and kind of use this idea or use this one same encounter. So yeah, this has been Dissecting a Dynamic Encounter. This has been Goblin Bridge, we call it. Action-oriented Goblin Bridge, I should call them. We are Omniverse Gamers. Like, subscribe, comment, all that jazz. I hope to see you soon, and keep on gaming.